All right, I'm here with John Schultz Barnes,
Hello.
typology famous person, we'll say. Or you got some pretty good traffic back in the day.
Yeah. I feel like my main claim to fame is being friends with Michael Pierce. I feel like that's more that's more my famousness.
Because if you just started, cranking out content, you would get views. It's just I think you talked about in one of your recent videos that a lot of your thinking leads to non-action. Like maybe that's like an introverted thinking thing. It tends to negate action as opposed to saying as opposed to affirming I should go and do this.
Yeah, I did you read Michael's book, Moats and Beams?
I own it actually. I probably skimmed through it. I need to actually do a deep dive in that book. I just got too much, I got too much different books going on. But if you mention a concept from it, I could probably remember it roughly. Because some of the ideas parallel other things too.
Yeah, I think the best work that he does in that book is his work on the quadras. And the thing that he says about the NTP SFJ quadra is something that really resonates with me. So he talks about the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, which is this poem about essentially like inaction, and about like trying to. It's interesting. It's like trying to use the intellect to get into the will. Yeah, I don't know. NTP SFJs feel very like intellect led, and then like the opposite. He poses that with the SFP NTJ quadra, which feels very like will led. And he even calls the NTP SFJ quadra like that feminine in this sense, because it's like it is because the intellect is reactive, right? The intellect, like, something appears in front of it and then the intellect has to kind of respond to it, whereas the will has a kind of a more of a freedom of action. So that's why he calls it feminine and masculine. But yeah, I mean, I also don't know whether it's true that all my thought leads towards inaction. A lot of my thought on the Myers-Briggs at least does, because it's kind of like I'm fighting against my type when I'm thinking about the Myers-Briggs. It's like I'm thinking about it and I like want to offer this INTP thing where it's like, okay, these are the definitions and now you can derive everything from that, but I'm just not that good at that. Like I'm not an INTP.
You don't want to drop anchor is the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm an EP, or at least likely an extroverted irrational type, right? And I've got at least a similar thing. It might be a bit different because I probably have like SENI. Like I'm more likely to get fixated on one detail and maybe run that and then be like, okay, now let's run a different thing. Like treating them almost like separate.
Oh, interesting.
There's maybe some of that going on, but there's still like the general irrationality of like I'm not 100% committed to the judgment, so to speak. Now I know with you're also referring to repressed introverted sensation, I believe, because I think you're attributing some sort of the building to sort of the SI, which is that correct? Am I misrepresenting?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely correct. That's how I think about it.
I think that's a really interesting idea. It's one of the things that Socionics leaves out of their understanding of introverted sensation. I mean, maybe modern schools, depends on who you talk to, but that's probably an issue because, okay, like if you take someone like Richard Dawkins, who I think you type as like INTP, right?
Yeah, I mean, I mostly go off of all the IDR labs typings. That's like,
right,
I don't do many typings. I just kind of trust their work, and then
well, it's definitely convenient to have a database where you can be like, okay, like because there's only so much time in the data.
Yeah,
every single figure. I've seen well, that's kind of where you would do, I guess, kind of the you would almost do like the Dom Turt loop thing and kind of focus on the fact that sort of the double introversion thing and be like, okay, this is like more TISI almost. Because that's what stands out to me with Richard Dawkins is there is kind of a solidity there, I suppose.
Yeah, there's an immovability to Richard Dawkins for sure. That feels,
I mean, you could,
feels less like you don't get that sense with Dennett. Like Dennett's like, you know, an atheist or whatever, but he's moving around. He's always kind of shucking and jiving with his propositions. He's much more of a trickster than Dawkins.
Right. I think I've seen some socionics who think that Richard Dawkins is a TE lead delta, which is kind of, I mean, they'd still
ESTJ,
be saying,
is that what that would be?
Yeah, ESTJ. But like they'd still be saying he's a rational type, but they're basically it depends. Like I was playing with
sorry, just my roommate. That's all good.
I was because I was playing with just thinking versus feeling, right? If we were just juxtaposing those things before getting into the individual function axis. You would use the sort of the chair thing, right? Where thinking would look at the function of the chair, and then and then feeling would bring in the extra stuff, or the non-essentials, which is kind of interesting. You also have the
ornamentation.
You also have the unity and multiplicity framework, which I kind of thought like, okay, here's a problem that I thought was there was if extroversion is the multiplicity and introversion is the unity. But then we do the TI versus FI. It sounds like, in a sense, FI is the multiplicity relative to TI in the sense that if you are including these non-essentials, that is almost its own kind of multiplicity. I know I'm playing like a kind of more of a semantic game, and you maybe mean something.
No, I think it's great. No, and I think you're right. I think that is a problem with how I conceptualized introversion and extroversion. It's not specific enough, the unity versus multiplicity thing. It's a little bit too philosophical, and it doesn't capture the experience. But so what I wanted to do, my goal in talking about unity and multiplicity was to take out the discussion of introversion and extroversion from the collective or from the subjective factor.
That's the main problem, because what
is the subjective factor? I mean, because
it works with FI, it might not work with TI as well, because if you take like a TI lead, let's say the Richard Dawkins example, like, do you really feel like he's operating in it? You could say, oh, well, he's, picking and choosing what premise he starts with, but that's kind of weak. It kind of falls apart. Like,
yeah. I mean, the character of introverted thinking is universalizing. It's like, that's one of its strongest things. So it's like saying that's part of the subjective factor. And then I get into how putting that in the subjective factor, universalization, actually kind of makes a stand towards nominalism. Like Jung is kind of favoring nominalism over and against realism by saying that the realists are really just like faithful to their, subjective things that are going on in their head. Because nominalism, it's really interesting. Like, I don't know, like nominalism and realism that's what Jung opens psychological types with. Like that's chapter 1 is this like metaphysics idea. So yeah, it's been at the heart of typology for a little bit.
I'm looking up nominalism, was because I forgot.
So nominalism is the idea that that the names of things, like cup, that this is just a creative fiction that we use to talk about this kind of clump of particles, right? The cupness doesn't actually exist for the nominalist, and that's why it's called nominalism, is because it's the names that exist. Whereas realists will say, no, there is a kind of a real cupness, or there's something behind this that's more real than just cells clumped together or just particles clumped together. Yeah, and so Jung associates nominalism, denying the independent existence of cupness. He associates that with extroverted thinking, and he associates realism. Actually, no, he associates it with extroversion. I personally think it's more associated with extroverted thinking, and he associates realism with introverted thinking or introversion. And I
This is
associate
like
it with
this
introverted
is like
thinking.
when you were talking to Jack about the mountain thing, right? Like some things belong on the mountain, some don't. It's an identity thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, it's about identities. It's essentially asking whether identities really exist. And the introverted type, according to Jung, would think yes, and the extroverted type would think no. And so it's interesting because like that problem alone, that doesn't have to do with the subjective factor or anything. That's like it's a metaphysical kind of I mean, I guess it does since it is talking about the subject and its involvement, but it's a metaphysical question. And like, so I don't know. I prefer to go there rather than talking about the unconscious, because the unconscious is essentially like, forgive me for maybe being a little too ENTP here, but it's kind of like saying I don't know. It's like, oh, it's from the unconscious. It's like
You're talking
you
about
can kind of
this
just pull
in
anything
reference
out
to
of there.
in reference to the subjective factor.
In reference to the subjective factor, then also in reference to how Jung talks about intuition, because he talks about intuition as like perception from the unconscious. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, just means perception from magic.
Right. And at that point, it gets weird because he would also, let's say, if he's talking about inferior intuition, he'd, also probably talk about, oh, it's appearing from the unconscious. So like he'll talk about Socrates and he'll be like, oh, this guy has like repressed intuition, and that's why he has his daemon that he talks to. And it's like, okay,
Yeah,
Young,
yeah, yeah.
where are you drawing the line? Because Young, you also fucking talk to apparently.
Your
Like,
diamonds, yeah, yeah.
where are you drawing the line and being like, well, this is conscious intuition versus unconscious intuition? So he's a bit promiscuous there with some of his
Yeah.
terminology,
Yeah.
but I mean, you can't fault him for it. Like, he's the genius who stumbled upon the initial concepts and is kind of playing with them.
Oh, for sure. But so, okay, sorry. So you asked me though about the unity multiplicity thing for introversion and extroversion, and I wanted to offer like a little bit of a better definition of that. I think it's more just like attention to the outside versus attention to the inside, and that sounds like the same thing, but it works for anything that's being perceived.
We're talking about introversion and extroversion, right? Attention to the outside versus attention to the inside. Okay,
yeah.
I'm following so far.
So it's like, the cup has an internal kind of structure, and you can get into how that would work out for. Okay, so it's like, how does this cup relate to the inside? That, let's say introverted sensation is asking that question. Introverted sensations inside is kind of the whole architecture of the house that they've made. What do they experience as as an inside? It could be their house, it could be the culture that they live in, and it could be their body, right? So that I like the inside outside thing because it affords the flexibility that I think you need to have all these different kinds of things that SI can do. Because people talk about SI as attention to the body, and they talk about it as like impressionistic kind of ideals of a specific culture. But anyways, how does this cup relate to the inside for introverted sensation? It's thinking about kind of concrete things that make up its identity as a person. Whereas like for SE, it's like, the cup, like it has external factors. I can throw it things, like, so SE, I can throw it places. SE, it seems to me, I don't have SE, so I'm kind of guessing, but SE has been represented as kind of like as just like, oh, I'm just seeing the details, like it's kind of just like the pure photographic experience of reality. And I've heard some critiques of this from SE types. There's like more of like this expansiveness with SE. So it's like for SE, the cup would be something like, how can this move in the field of possibilities? Like, so that the outside for SE is kind of like, it's concrete stuff, but it's like a field of movement for me.
You're saying like,
that
what can I
like
do? What can I do with the cup, basically?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
exactly.
then with introverted sensing, were you tying it more almost to a, I don't want to say memory because I think it's more complicated than that.
So
what you were saying, what it means, like basically within their, I don't know, their ontology. Would you say that, or?
I wouldn't say that SI makes ontological really claims, but one one experience I had when I was walking with an ISFJ that was really helpful. We were walking on this college campus, and she said, like, that chair isn't supposed to be there. It was like, she noticed a chair out of place, and she was just like, immediately was like, that chair is not supposed to be there. So there's like, it's like they have this kind of map of the relationship of concrete things, the relationships of very concrete things.
That chair is not supposed to be there, as in relative to where it was last time.
Yeah, and where it is in relationship to every other detail in the campus.
Right, as in, is she saying that it got moved, or is she saying that, or is it more like this is dysfunctional in where it's been placed?
Well, I mean, there seemed to be, a little bit of like a moral kind of like judgment involved. But the important thing, I guess, in presenting that is seeing how, okay, yes, sensing, right, because it's attentive to concrete things, necessarily has this attention to multiplicity, right? Because there's all these details involved in concrete things. But the introverted thing is like stitching all of these concrete things together into like a singular map and a singular identity. And she's noticing that things are departing from that singular identity.
Right, but in this case, it's specifically like, it's like, I guess you walk to your childhood home and they've redone the stairs or something. They've painted the house a different color. Like, is that what you're getting at? It's in reference to what it was prior specifically. So we're tying it directly to memory in this case, or like, as in, she had seen the chair in a different place for the last year, and then all of a sudden they moved it, and that was very jarring to her because it was a, I guess, violation of the continuity. Okay, so
and I think there's something that's related to time with all the introverted functions too. And I think Jung would kind of agree with that extroversion is kind of attentive to like the thing right now as it appears right now, and introversion is kind of creating continuity with things throughout time. So I wouldn't say that introverted sensation is the only thing that has this like memory thing.
Right, because at least with introverted perception specifically, you can kind of imagine how both have a relationship to time, I suppose, or how things are unfolding. It's kind of interesting because I know in I guess original Socionics, they were talking about how introversion was wasn't about the objects, but the relationship between objects. And
oh, really?
And that kind of fits with some of what you were just saying about introversion, I think. Like with introverted thinking, for example, if we're talking about sort of there is that, if there is to be this like unity, then there needs to be sort of, it has to do with the interrelationships between different things rather than just, I guess extroverted thinking on the other hand would be more like, how do I get X, and just sort of ignoring any sort of continuity or interconnectedness there, which is why it's more practical, or it's more it's more situational to the problem that's in front of it, I suppose.
Yeah. So it's so interesting. Like I don't know how I feel. Like sometimes I hear like socionic stuff, and it's just like seems like the opposite of what I like. And then sometimes I hear socionic stuff, and it's like, oh yeah, that's brilliant. And I really don't know what to make of socionics.
Right, because sometimes with extroverted judging in Jung, he's talking about sort of with extroverted rationality, there might be an external structure. And in socionics, because they're talking about with introverted rationality, they make this claim about the relationship between things. Sometimes it gets interpreted in a way where you'll have a case where they're saying, oh, look, this person's looking at the relationship between these different rules or whatever. But then by Jungian standards, what they're doing is more extroverted thinking because it's like an external formula or something.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, I'm not really being that clear there. I'm just imagining.
No, I get what you mean though. Yeah, it just seems like they're just a little bit too rigid. I don't know. That seems to be the like they've done some good thinking about like what the functions are and what the functions relate to, but then they like apply it in just this very kind of like rigid mechanical way, and it just
Well, there's modern socionics that's gone in a million different directions depending on what school, and then there's, I guess, some of the original definitions Augusta laid out, which, obviously just like Jung, she's going to get some stuff wrong, but I think maybe some of her original stuff has more continuity with Jung. Like I know with extroverted thinking, she would say it's the movement of objects, which if you wanted to connect it to your multiplicity, it's sort of looking at what's in front of it. And then the TI was the relationship between objects. I know it sounds weird. It sounds like we're talking about sensation.
I actually kind of like that a lot. Yeah, that's pretty good. I mean, I would definitely have to include the concept of like purposes for extroverted thinking. It doesn't seem to be the movement of objects without some kind of purpose. Right.
So she would tie it to work, like for example, like how to accomplish this work situation efficiently or whatever. There would be you're gauging the movement of objects basically.
And she would tie it like in the definition to work.
Yeah, I think there's usually extroverted thinking's tied almost not directly, but there's an association there.
Okay, yeah, seems a little too specific, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't only work, but that was like sort of a thing that she was playing with, and with introverted thinking, the relationship between objects, it's kind of like your mountain thing where you're saying like what belongs on the mountain, what doesn't belong on the mountain. There's like what is this relative to this? What is that relative to this? I don't know if you think relativity is the wrong word, but there's a measuring going on. Like this is a cup. If you compare this cup to that cup, they're both, kind of meeting the mark in terms of what is a cup. And then this other thing is not quite meeting that criteria. So that's why it's sort of the relationship between objects. This one does not. You had done the thing where you're talking about the Russian students where they tested them. What'd they say? They had a fucking, I don't know, like an axe, a tool, some other shit, and then a bird. And the bird does not fit into that.
Get him out of here. Yeah.
So it's the relationship between these four things. Well, this fourth thing does not belong with these other things, and that's sort of the why.
But it's specifically taxonomic kind of judgment. It's categorical judgment, like because you can do the same thing with. I mean, that's the point of the Russian example. Like you can do the same thing with a introverted feeling kind of leading thing, and it's like they all belong together. I can make this synthetic harmonious story where like they build a barn and the bird lives there and there's water for the bird. But if you bring like a fire into this thing, then that has to go. That can't be on the mountain. That doesn't work in the ecosystem. Right. So introverted feeling can also do that kind of judgment against things, like get it off the mountain or whatever, but it's not a categorical thing like as it is in the thinking functions, which is not how I presented it at first when I was first thinking about this stuff.
This brings up sort of the issue of content, because you talk about how, for example, we can't say thinking only deals with this content or feeling only deals with that content, because you could have two philosophers that are both, I don't know, into, for example, I don't know, meta ethics, and you could say like, well, they could both, approach that. I had sort of been of the mind that I almost thought, like with that example with the bird and how it doesn't fit the other categories, there's almost, I feel like even though feeling is rationality, there has to be an emotional root there to sort of like you're dealing with the zone of affect. And I know Jung likes to separate that from feeling, but I feel like that is like, if we're gonna say that, if we're gonna lay out two kinds of judgment, we're gonna say one is thinking, and with that example at least, we're sort of we're ironing out that it's looking at basically the function, and this thing does not fit into that function essentially. Then the feeling differs and includes things that don't belong together, because basically there's an affect aspect, an emotion aspect that is bringing in extra shit that does not fit in the category essentially. No?
Yes. No, yes. I think that's great. I think that's great. And what I would want to do is say, what is emotion? Like,
Exactly.
What is emotion structurally?
Okay.
Like, that's such a like NTP thing to say, but what is emotion structurally? And I think so. The main metaphor I use for the feeling function now is music. And it is very strange. It is very strange that music has as deep a connection to our emotions as it does. And I think there's something about recursiveness with music. There's something about something moving back and forth. It sounds like really abstract, but like what music fundamentally is a thing like vibrating. It's like, so the bird, for example, you have to, for something to be alive, it has to have things moving back and forth when it within it. But it has to have a recursive causation.
Yes, but you see, we take the word emotion. What's in there? Motion. It, to me, that it connects directly through that pathway.
Yes, and self causation especially, and so, yeah, and this gets into like big problems in modern philosophy where they try to explain all meaning through thinking. They try to talk about logic through thinking, and then Gödel comes up and says, hey, when you have recursion, this doesn't work. Like, you can't get to certain propositions because of recursion. I'm simplifying that because I don't totally understand it, but I know that recursion is a problem for the thinking kind of like aim to create this totally pyramidal structure of how things work.
So,
but yeah,
I think, like, for example, okay, on a basic level, I almost feel like if we're talking about, let's say, normative ethics versus like meta ethics.
Okay, you'll have to explain the difference between those to me.
I think the difference would be basically like like if we were saying something's good or bad, meta ethics would be the one that says, well, what does it even mean for something to be good? What does that even mean? Like just set the scope and frame to begin with of what these things even mean. To me, that's more like, well, it would, when I'm just dealing with thinking versus feeling, like without getting into introvert extrovert, I think thinking is more like the meta ethics, essentially.
Yeah, sure.
The function. What is the chair? What are we even talking about? Yeah. So, and then feeling functions, I feel like, and this gets weird if you compare FE to FI, because obviously FI is not necessarily going around telling people what to do, at least FI leads maybe, but I would say like feeling in general is more normative ethics, because it's just going straight to the, this is good, this is bad, you should do this or you should not do that. That to me is more, normative ethics has a connection to feeling in that way. So even when I look at like a type and they're a thinking type, I feel like if they're getting into normative ethics, the feeling function is present there, because you might disagree with this and that's fine. I'm probably more on the side of being like a ethical emotivist, in that I think once you, let's say, like there's a certain, like for example, let's say you have a religion or a faith, and there's a certain amount of logic that goes into it. I think at a certain point, once you engage in good or bad, at some point there has to be an emotional leap that takes you into that sort of territory or makes you. I don't think logic or thinking can do that all.
I feel like the sorry, go on, Fetch, please. Sorry.
No. I'm kind of just all over the place actually. But.
I feel like so I'm Catholic, and I feel like the Catholic tradition would kind of say the opposite. That essentially like good and bad. That's a matter of your reason. Like you're like. I mean, there's a way in which you have to have like self mastery, and like that process involves the will, so it involves emotion, right? It involves the self causation thing. But once you've got self mastery, you just do the good. You don't need to feel things. You just do it. So yeah, I don't know. I really feel like the good and bad thing is pretty much equally thinking and feeling.
I know in examples it probably would. It would be hard for me to sustain my position. I would have to just keep it conceptual and say like feeling was more normative than thinking. If thinking's just describing if it's true or false and the function of something, and then I'd be saying like feeling takes that sort of emotional leap of ascribing value or asserting a value. I mean, you could say you could say thinking could ascribe a functional value, like this hammer works better than this, whatever for doing this job. Maybe that's like a TE example. So you could say in that case they are maybe saying there is a value being ascribed there based on the function or whatever.
I mean, I've kind of talked about it a little bit already, which is interesting that it's come up already. But I feel like the intellect versus will thing is maybe a little bit helpful for distinguishing thinking and feeling. I don't know. That's probably not totally right, but it does seem that there's something that recognizes the good in a person, and then there's something that like delights in the good, and those are two separate things. And if you want to be normative, if you want to like make an impact, you're probably going to be using both, but you're trying to move other people's wills, right?
Exactly. And that's where the feeling comes
loving the good. Yeah.
If you're actually actively trying to it's one thing to say something's true or false, it's another thing to say like people should do this or they should do that. You are now kind of engaged in the department of will. And if we go back to emotion being about motion or movement of some kind, some sort of energy transfer. I don't even know what I'm saying, but
no, I think it's great. This is great.
I guess this is just unedited us, just spitballing on stuff.
Yeah.
Let me see. What are you talking about? Oh yeah, I mean, like even when you. Like if you look at someone like Jordan Peterson, I don't know. I think you usually run the INFJ argument with him, maybe, or NFJ at least. I don't see it like totally with Jordan Peterson. Nothing about Jordan Peterson makes me go like, oh yeah, INFJ. But I know IDR Labs types him as INFJ. Actually, no, that's not true. Not nothing. I mean, he talks about being very high in compassion, right? And how he hates firing people. So I mean, he's got that, which is weird because like he's got this like persona of being like Mr. Macho, assertive guy. Sometimes does he have that persona?
Yeah. I mean, when he did the letter to Christians or whatever, letter to Christian churches, and he's like, why the heck why the bleep aren't you making these young men, walk miles up hills with, ankle weights on or whatever. But yeah, I know Michael Pierce types him as INFJ and like has a strong identification with that. And so I trust Michael's instincts on that one. So
there could be, it could just be an extroverted rationality thing where like either way, like the other argument is people think he's like an ENTJ or something, but regardless, the pattern you're seeing there is sort of a extroverted rationality and NI is what most people are sort of feeling with him.
Yeah.
You could go back to what I was saying about normative ethics and say a normative ethics approach is more of a EJ or IJ thing, or in terms of extroverted rationality, wanting to assert you should do this, you shouldn't do this, this is how you should live your life, make your bed, this is how to be a man, whatever. I think, okay, to be a man stuff, I think a lot of that is actually, I think a lot of that's extroverted feeling stuff, because it's sort of like as ironically, a lot of it will talk about, you know, masculine virtue like stoicism, but a lot of it is, I think, coming from sort of this, again, I think I link it to emotion. You should move in this way. This is good to be a man in this way, sort of thing. Like there is a social, and then there's like a social harmony thing, or a social archetype that they're a social role that they want you to play. Like I think there's sort of an extroverted feeling aspect to that. I would imagine. Now you could say, on the other hand, to play devil's advocate, you could say a lot of those kind of self-helpy talk things, you could argue some of it's TE, but even with here's the thing with high extroverted thinking. Like I understand there's a reputation for it being bossy. I think in a work context that makes sense. I think when you're telling people how to live their life, like I think, or what they should do, there's usually like an emotional force there. Maybe with high extroverted thinking, that's like the inferior introverted feeling coming out to an extent. Because if you're, again, we're not just talking about function anymore. I mean, in some cases we are. We're usually talking about, they're usually ascribing value to something, and it's going beyond, I think, the general parameters of just functionality. It's going into leading into other territory, and there's emotional sentiments there, and there's clearly we're clearly entering the zone of affect at that point. Now, whether you want to say that's strictly the feeling function or the thinking function, you could say like, well, both thinkers and feelers engage in the zone of affect, so it belongs to neither, or something like that. I would probably say that thinking types, they still use feeling. So even if I tie the zone of affect to the feeling function, I could still say, well, thinking types still do that because when they use their feeling function.
Yeah, I mean, my impression so I know an ENTJ. One of my roommates is ENTJ. Love him very much, and he does this thing where he's like, transformative thing in his life was reading Aristotle, was reading Nicomachean Ethics. And it's like, the ENTJ wants to know, what am I being judged by? Like, what am I being judged by? What's my like purpose? And let me just do that. And that energy there is like, it's very much both like this TEFI thing where it's like, you should, and it's like, he wants to share this with other people too.
It's the Aristotle virtue ethics.
Yeah.
You are fulfilling your function or something.
You are fulfilling your function. These are the things that it means to be a human being. This is the virtue of being a human being. You should do those things.
Right. But Jordan does a lot of that. Jordan does a lot of that.
Does.
And we need to know, where are we drawing the line and saying, it's more of an FE thing versus it's more of a TE thing. I mean, with him, he's getting into a lot of other stuff too. But
I mean, yeah. Jordan's very interesting. He also has this like follow, like, it's not totally the Joseph Campbell thing, like follow your bliss thing, but like he has this visionary thing that's I feel like more central than like a virtue ethics idea. Again, this goes into his idea of adventure. It's like there's this thing that's calling out to you, and it's that notion of calling out to that I feel is a little bit more feeling function y. It's like exactly. So okay, another good way I think to think about the difference between thinking and feeling is pushing versus pulling. Like it's pretty basic. Like thinking causation is pushes. It's like, I mean, it's especially obvious with extroverted thinking. It's like, okay, I'm going to cause these kind of things to happen in the world, and like I'm going to push out.
And then TI pushes it off the mountain in terms of its identity.
Yeah. Totally. And then feeling is more like I'm going to create something that is going to draw this sort of person in, right? It's about bringing things towards. And this goes into another thing with modern philosophy that's like heavily thinking, is that it's all a bunch of push causation. It's not, there's no pulling causation except with gravity. And yeah, that's something that I'm getting from Ian McGilchrist as well.
Are you a philosophy student? Like
no, I've never formally no, that's not true. I've taken philosophy classes in college, but my degree was in art history. The philosophy department was just a little bit too thinking heavy, essentially. So I was like, I need to go look at some images. I need to go look at some pictures. And what I ended up doing in my art history classes was mostly just like writing philosophy papers anyways, but like using the art as a jumping off point.
Well, that's like English literature too. Like you do the same thing in English literature. You read a classic like you mentioned the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which it's been a while since I looked at it, so I don't remember all the details of that story. But basically you're basically engaging in well, I guess more continental philosophy essentially.
Oh, yeah, as an English student, yeah, probably.
It's not really
yeah.
Philosophy as much.
I had an English teacher or an English professor recommended me some Heidegger, and I read a little bit of Heidegger because of that. So yeah, continental for sure in English.
But you said art history was your major, right?
Yeah, art history was my major. Yep.
I don't mean to pry too much. Maybe you don't want to.
That's fine.
Like what made you choose art history?
I was like, so I read Sexual Personae, the Camille Paglia book. And there's fun metaphysics that's going on there. And so I enjoyed that. And then I took an art history survey class. And the teacher was just amazing. Scott Montgomery at University of Denver just blew my mind. First class, he has the what, I can't remember what state it was, but the Confederate statues that they were taking down, there's like crime tape around them, the Confederate statues, because they didn't want people to violate it. And he was like, art is a crime. And I was like, this class is awesome. And then I was like returning to the sacraments, to returning to Catholicism, and Professor Montgomery's specialty was Gothic art. So I was just like having my mind blown by medieval art and like getting into medieval philosophy, getting into Catholicism. And I was just like, this is heaven. I'm loving this culture stuff. And then in art history, it's like you can do this very interesting, and it's something that Jung does, this thing where you look at the evolution of kind of like a culture's consciousness over time, and like how they move towards different kind of metaphysical poles. Like Jung would say that our culture is becoming much more extroverted. And you can see that happening in our history. It's like things they stop being like this abstracted kind of like spiritual thing, and they get like much more naturalistic, much more bodily. And you can see how we're like moving down the ontological hierarchy.
It's like I have one of those, it's more of an Eastern, they have like the meditators thing where they have the chakras going down, and like the lower chakras are like the lower, what do they call it? It's less not sophisticated, but yeah, basically like the base. It's kind of like, it's basically like Jung saying like up here, like the maybe like the thinking and intuition is more like higher, or it's like your thing where you talk about heaven and earth, basically, almost. Sure. Where you're saying, although it gets super complicated when we start talking about the individual function axis, because then you can pick that apart. If we're just talking about the basic Jungian faculties like sensing, intuition, and thinking, feeling, it becomes easier to do this, but it gets more complicated when we actually get into the specific function axis, because you can find like exceptions to the rule, because then there's like an overlay of two different sort of mechanisms happening, because then you have the introversion, extroversion come in. Well, you were actually talking just before about just now about introversion, extroversion, and that the direction of art is becoming more extroverted.
And culture
So
in general.
you can almost say that the extroversion is more the earth or the worldly baseness, and then the introversion is. I mean, now you're kind of circling back to Jung's subjective factor.
I know. I mean, I think the thing to keep in mind with that stuff is that often when you say one of those things, like it's becoming more extroverted, like you sometimes are sneaking in like, oh no, it's actually becoming more extroverted thinking or whatever. Because I can refer back to the introverted sensation thing where it's like, oh, okay, no, there is a version of introversion that does not have to do with abstraction per se.
And I'm not trying to. I'm sorry if I'm like super annoying. I'm not trying.
No,
to,
it's great. I love it. It's great.
I'm not trying to like kick over your sandcastle or whatever. Like it's not
no,
like
kick it over.
It's not like I have something a better axiom or framework to offer. I'm just like, I just enjoy playing with it and seeing like, okay, like would it work here? Would it work there? But it's not like I have the better model to replace it with. I'll play with Socionics, but I'm not like 100% committed to Socionics because I mean there's a lot of reasons why I'm not 100% committed to Socionics. Let me see. What were we even art history? I don't know. That's
you asked me if I was a philosophy student. That's I think how we got onto that.
You are in the sense that informally or whatever, not I meant it like at first I just meant it more like you majored in philosophy. It was kind of what was kind of my guess, especially you're friends with Michael Pierce, and I kind of thought, oh, maybe they're both philosophy students. I should read Motes and Beams.
It's good. The quadra section I think is excellent. I think it's the best part of the book.
Yeah, I mean,
it's great.
I feel like I might prefer his handling of aristocratic, and I don't know if he does aristocrat, democratic, or exactly, but I think he has different terms that I know he uses aristocrat and
democrat, theocrat, anarch. I think is the four that he does.
I might prefer how he handles it over how Socionics handles it, because there's just certain things where I'm like, I'm not sure. So yeah, there's that.
Interesting.
Is there? Sorry, go ahead.
How big is Socionics? Like it always seems like there's like 1 million people like working on Socionics scholarship.
Well, I don't
know.
There's obviously the OG like Augusta Socionics, and then that branched off into a million different schools, and then there's like modern Western Socionics like WSS, which is going to differ than some of the source material, or they've had to rework it. Now, to be fair to them, a lot of the original source material, there was so much going on and so many different ideas coming, kind of like Jung, where you do have to do an editing job. So like someone like Jack has had to do a lot of like an editing job where things didn't make sense, or they were incoherent, or you had two contradicting ideas, where you just couldn't reconcile them without either changing the semantics or reworking a definition or something. So in that sense, I understand the direction that modern Western Socionics has gone in. But it'd probably be best to talk to Jack if you wanted all the details on that. Okay. Interesting. I used to, get into it with him like in the past, because I was like kind of
get into it, like argue.
Yeah, like just because he would just present it as like, well, this is how Socionics works, and I'm like, to me, like I like to maintain sort of a historical, like understand where ideas came from, and be like, okay, like at this point, Socionics was like this, and then there was this fork in the road where once certain schools went in this direction and the other schools went in that direction, and to just say this is how Socionics works is an oversimplification, and it's more of a marketing tactic that I kind of took issues with, because it was but I've softened on that in recent times, because you could say like all typology systems kind of do that, where we use the same jargon we use the same jargon, but we mean different things. And
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me
yeah.
to for me to like an immature version of me maybe would have wanted to, I guess, police that on some level, but
Sure, sure.
that's maybe like
So
looking
that's
at zooming out a bit. It's kind of like I should, probably soften on that a bit because the reality is like again, and then you could also kind of point the finger at socionics, like okay, if you're defining things differently, there is an open thing of like, well, maybe you should just use different jargon. Maybe you should not use the same words if you mean something completely different.
mm,
Though you could say you can still draw parallels, so it's kind of complicated.
yeah. Okay, one of the things I really love about Jung's work is how basic the terms are. Like using everyday modern terms like thinking and feeling. There's something about that that's I think is just brilliant because the realities that he's talking about are so basic that like there should be words already in the language to describe those things. I guess extroversion and introversion is kind of the exception to that. But
Yeah, because
but even those words have become like people just accepted that like that's a reality.
right.
You know?
Well, people have gone more in the colloquial. The colloquial use of the term is more like what extroversion is like social gregariousness or something like that. Effectively,
Yeah.
like modern psychology, the way they use it is very. I mean, you can understand why they did because they're trying to measure something, and if you're trying to measure something, you need something kind of obviously demonstratable. So it's like, oh, these people are more. They get energy from socializing, and these other people don't get energy from socializing. But obviously, in the Jungian schools, that becomes more of a complicated question because you could say, well, FE maybe is more drawn towards some sort of social, maybe there's a social component there, and then maybe extroverted thinking you'd have a harder time sustaining that position. That you could still say it's more attentive to the external, and in doing and being more attentive to the external, you're going to have to interact with people more or something. I don't know. So it gets very interesting. Is there what have you been working on conceptually that you'd like to sort of throw on the mix? I mean, I don't, maybe you have, I just thought I'd ask you because it sounded like you were at least a couple of weeks ago kind of itching to talk about certain things. So I don't know if there's like
the thing that I think is the most interesting is how I think about the feeling function is this idea of recursiveness being involved with the feeling function. And it relates to how I think about the thinking function too. It's like the thinking function, it seems to be just like linear judgment that proceeds from linear kind of structures, and then the feeling function seems to be judgment that is related to wavy structures. So like, what are the vibes in this place? Like a vibe is literally like a wave. It's like, what is the tone that emerges from these things moving together?
It's your music analogy again.
Yeah. So I think that's cool. I think that idea is cool. That's the idea that I'm most excited about because I mean, this from when I first started thinking about typology, it was something that I wanted to do. That was a very motivating thing for me was removing the content from the functions and just talking about what the functions do structurally. So I feel like I finally kind of have an idea of the functions structurally. But right now it's like I can say that to you and that's cool, but like I need to provide like examples of it. I need to provide elaborations, right? It's too much in heaven. I need to bring it down to earth. So what I'm doing is I'm working on these movie analyses where I'm talking about like how I see this actually playing out aesthetically. And I think the aesthetic thing is helpful because it doesn't rely on my personal anecdotes or my personal encounters with people. I can show someone like this is what's going on in Amelie and this is what's going on in Anatomy of a Fall, and that's why it's a demonstration of this kind of principle. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
I know you kind of defined it earlier, but revisiting this notion of recursiveness, Can you just quickly lay that out again? What you mean exactly?
So,
What you mean?
yeah. So recursiveness, it's like with thinking. So this would be something that's not recursive. I can draw a map of the causes. I can say, oh, this particle hit this particle, and this particle hit this particle, and these particles went that way. But with recursiveness, the idea is that the whole is affecting the system, and every part of the system is affecting the whole at the same time, so that there's this relationship between whole and part in the system. Something like the way water moves would be recursive. Like everything is like sloshing together and affecting every other thing at the same time. So it's like you can't. I mean, in principle, you could map out the molecular things that are happening, but it's impossible to say, from our perspective, like, oh, this thing caused that thing. It's like, no. Okay, the water's just kind of moving in this unpredictable way because it's so recursive and because there's so much internal causation going on. And so, yeah, it also has to do with like cycles, right? So cycles are recursive, right? They recur. And this has to do with if something is living, right? It needs a cycle going on inside of it. You need to or for something to be self-moving, like a car, right? You need a cycle happening inside, right? So that's why I think, and then those things end up being in cycles, right? Living things end up being in cycles. They respond to the sun. Well, they go to sleep when the sun's down. They do things in this like cyclical way.
Well, I guess like with music, if you were to just isolate the individual parts, you wouldn't really get the holistic effect of music. You would need to, it's kind of like the way all these things chime together. And that's sort of, I guess, what you're talking about, the recursive. I should look up the actual dictionary definition of recursive and just see like how it applies here.
And I might
also, sorry, go ahead.
I might be using recursive in a kind of like novel way there, but yeah, the whole thing with music is, I think, a great grasp of the idea, because that experience that the whole causes in you is not reducible to any one of the specific things. It is the movement of that thing into one harmony. So,
well, this could lead us into a conversation about, for example, consciousness, the notion of consciousness, because that could be an example of that, where you can't isolate the individual parts and make consciousness, or it works better if you treat it like music, where it's like this symphony coming together in the brain or whatever creates this. I mean, you probably don't like the materialist explanation for consciousness, I would assume.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's reducible to material. Yeah.
You don't.
That's obvious. Okay. I mean, I say that, but there's obviously philosophers who disagree with me. But
like, you don't think like we could just say like, okay, there's these neurons and different sections of the brain firing just like a symphony. There's different instruments playing, and then they coagulate together, and then it creates our experience of consciousness. Like is that unsatisfying to you?
That part's not unsatisfying, and I don't think that is reducing consciousness to that. As long as you don't say that there's no effect of the meaning that emerges from that back down on those parts, right? Because if I have an experience from my brain, right, and it's like this structural experience of what's going on, that thing has meaning, and that meaning then causes me to do things, right, which causes material differences in my brain, just maybe like where my brain is positioned in the room, like if it causes me to leave the room. So as long as you say that there's also causation from consciousness down to the materiality, I'm fine with that.
What would be an example of doing the opposite? Like, what would be an example of someone saying that it doesn't have that impact?
Yeah, I guess eliminativism, probably. I think that's the philosophical term for saying that it's people who say that consciousness is an epiphenomenon. That consciousness is something that emerges, and an epiphenomenon is something that emerges from a system, but that actually has no effect on the system. Yeah. So like you essentially, if you can explain the entirety of the movement of the particles in me without appealing to meaning, then you're doing this thing. Then you're doing this thing where you're saying that consciousness doesn't have an effect. And people do that. I mean, people say that like you can explain everything through the motion of physics. So therefore there's no consciousness. One of the best things that I heard John Vervaeke say is that he says, I take it there is no such thing as epiphenomenon, though, because if you name something, it is evidence that it is causing something. It is at least causing you to name it, and so it's causing something. It's not something without causation.
Looking up epiphenomenon.
Nice.
Secondary phenomenon by something that accomplishes a primary process but has no causal influence on it. Mm-hmm. What the? So basically, you're saying, okay, once we have the music, the consciousness, that in itself becomes its own thing that then affects. Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the unity has a causal thing, right. The joining of those things into one thing, that then acts down back on the system, right? So it's like, if you know this to be true, it's pretty obvious. Like you learn words. Nuremberg. I don't know why that was the first word that came into my head.
Yeah, just an example.
Nuremberg is a collection of letters, right? And then when you move it into unity, you get meaning out of it, and then
this is the Immanuel. Is this like the Immanuel Kant thing where he's basically saying like what does he say? The structure of language basically like impacts your perception of reality. So almost like
I don't know.
It's not the same. It's not the same thing. But like what I'm saying is like you're saying consciousness itself becomes its own sort of thing that then affects everything else. Sorry, I'm not.
Oh yeah. No. I see what you're saying. That because consciousness has a specific structure, things are going to lay themselves out in a specific way. Yeah, I think that's similar to what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I have to play with this more because let me see. Do you mind if I use the washroom really quick? We can edit this part.
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna go get a coffee. Then.
How much time do you have? Or do you like? Are you fucking tired now? Like you?
No, I'm good. I'm good to keep going. Ugh.
Well, it's interesting. I think when we were both probably late teens, went through like an atheist phase, I think.
Oh yeah, really?
Well, I don't think I ever went that far. I would have just, I'm still basically what I would call agnostic, as in like, I don't see, like, once you go into like Christopher Hitchens territory and you're like, you know, I don't know, did he say, I don't know, if you're going to assert there is no God, it's kind of it's a weird move to make, because first of all, what is God? Like, what are we even talking about? There's that aspect, right?
Yeah.
What made you? Because I actually was raised Catholic. I'm gonna do a deep dive into the Bible at some point.
Cool.
I haven't made time for it yet, but I do need to. I am genuinely curious about it, and open-minded to it too. Like, if I find something there that is compelling, I might, make that move. It's hard to say. What made you, like, okay, originally you were an atheist, so you're probably
well, I was raised Catholic as well.
Okay, yeah, you're raised Catholic, but then you went through an atheist phase, where, I don't know, didn't you say you were like a moral relativist basically at that point?
Yeah, my atheism was caused by exactly what we were just talking about. That I didn't understand how intelligence worked. Like, I couldn't figure out.
You mean consciousness, or?
Yeah, intelligence, consciousness, mind. I didn't understand how it could have effects on reality if there's already this complete map of how reality works that doesn't involve intelligence, and a complete map of reality of how reality works. Sorry, that doesn't involve intelligence. Where are you going to put God in that picture? Like, what is he doing in that picture? He's just kind of like, he's not in the picture. Yeah. So as I kind of like, one of the really helpful things was when Jordan Peterson would kind of like, he didn't explain free will, but he was just like, okay, kid, just like, don't worry about like creating this third person map of reality yet. Stay in your perspective, stay in phenomenology, do good things, and see how that changes how the world discloses itself to you. And like, that's why I think Jordan Peterson is an epical figure. Like, that move is so brilliant. And like, yeah. I can't say enough good things about Jordan Peterson, even if I think he's gone off the deep end. Like, amazing, amazing guy.
Okay, so you made the step. You moved back to, I guess, becoming I don't know how I want to like orient this. My problem with Jordan Peterson is he seems to approach religion as a consequentialist, which is basically like, I don't know what his actual beliefs are, but he's kind of like, this is the structure that maintains the stability of society. And to me, like, whether you're a believer or not, that to me is kind of gross, because it's like, if you don't actually believe, but you are affirming this just because of the basically almost the utility of it, of maintaining stability. It's like there's something, and maybe this is my feeling function. There's something that feels empty about that.
No, 100%. I think it is an unchristian kind of move to do that sort of thing. because the Christians believe that the true and the good coincide. They believe that those two things, like, there is a relationship between them. So when it's so interesting because Richard Dawkins has that faith so strongly. Like, he's like, I do not care if I cannot see how the consequences of my atheism are good. If I think it's true, those consequences like must be good. And like, that is a kind of faith. But yeah, I don't know if Jordan were to say, because this is good for society, you should do it, like go to church, like be Christian, believe, then I would have problems with it. But I don't know. It's almost like, if you can believe this is true, you should do it. Like, that's the thing he's doing. So like, if you can believe it, you should do it. I don't think he would say like, don't do it, don't believe it, but just do it.
Yeah. There is kind of like almost the impression you get. Now, obviously, like, you're an example of an intelligent person who is what we'll call religious. But the feel you almost get with someone like Jordan is it's like, we need stupid people to believe this, so that society does not fall into anarchy.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm completely misrepresenting the vibe.
I don't get that feeling, but that's interesting to hear. That's very interesting to hear.
Maybe I need to do a deep dive back into his work, and because I could be completely misrepresenting him, and maybe he doesn't see it that way at all. But I mean, Richard Dawkins actually recently was like, "Oh, I'm a cultural Christian." And I'm like, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, yeah, his back's against the wall.
Him saying it's almost more offensive than Jordan saying it, because with Jordan, I could at least be like, well, maybe he does believe.
Yeah.
With Dawkins, it's like, no, just pure utilitarianism here. Like, I don't need barbarians, bashing my door down. So yeah, you dum-dums out there, make sure you follow this.
You be Christian.
You don't, so you don't ruin my I'm
trying to do biology over here.
My ability to live my life in peace. So there's that. I don't know. Back to consciousness. Okay, so you're basically saying, like, okay, there's the parts of the engine, and then they make coming together. They make the music or the car or whatever, and then that becomes its own thing that can then, it's like the earth builds up to the heaven, and then the heaven can come back down and also have an effect on the earth again or something. No?
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Yeah.
I don't know what, like, okay. And then,
sorry.
Your issue is that there's people who say that it's just consciousness is just an emergent phenomenon. That on its face does not sound wrong to me. But you're basically saying it's an emergent phenomenon of these parts coming together, just like music is an emergent phenomenon of the different instruments playing together and manifesting the music. And then you're taking a step further and saying, well, then the music is now its own entity that can then have, there's something missing here that I'm not getting.
There is something missing. Yes. And I've been trying to figure out what it is, because I've listened to Jonathan Pageau do this kind of argument for a long time, and I've always been like, this isn't satisfying. It's for the human person. There is, in Genesis, it describes it as there's a gathering of dust, and then God's spirit is blown into the thing. So there is a way in which, the body, dust, body, unintelligence, matter is gathered together. It forms this structure that I'm talking about. But then you also need intelligence that's not connected to matter, I think, to kind of come into that thing and like start the system. You have to have pure intelligence acting on the system in some way. That's not connected to the structure of the thing. That's why there's this insistence in Catholic philosophy that that it's both a gathering of multiplicity and this thing from above that a rational soul cannot just randomly emerge from matter. You can't have an intending intellect that has qualia coming out of matter that doesn't have that quality. Like you could still like have the structure of a brain and not have qualia, which qualia is this term in philosophy for like internal experience.
You're basically this is connecting to free will, right? No.
Yes.
That's the feel I'm getting here. I don't have like a super clear feel on it, but
yeah,
you're talking about basically there's, I don't want to say the driver of the car, but there's something, maybe a move there where you're saying like there is what's the word for it? I don't know, agency or something. Agency.
I don't like that language for talking about free will. And this is a pretty idiosyncratic thing for me. I like to talk about will as essentially like something more like trust. Right. And this gets into that difference between push causation and pull causation. Will is often presented as push causation. It's like you have to have this internal ghost thing pushing the engine, pushing the car. I think of will as something more like, okay, the intellect presents this idea to you. The intellect thinks it's good, and then the will trusts that goodness, and it says, okay, let's do it. So it's more of a pull causation with will. And yes, this is happening, you know, in the structure of the person, right? In terms of the structure of his physiology, having real causation, but then also somehow beyond that structure, somehow this kind of like, you know, ghostly thing, this intelligence that's not connected to matter. I think that is inevitable, and I think Peugeot kind of like wants to get around that thing when he talks about it, and same with Vervaeke, but I think that's inevitable. You have to have intelligence not connecting to matter, having some sort of causation on matter.
And this is kind of where, circling back, like will connects to feeling, which I connect to emotion. Again, emotion. Like, and it reminds me again, like a lot of people who are determinists, maybe you were like this when you were younger. I feel like that's almost like a really differentiated thinking sort of stance almost to have, because it's kind of like you were saying, like a lot of times your thinking leads to the choice to not do something rather than to do something.
Sure. Yeah. Determinism was kind of the main thing I was appealing to when I said that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of, because free will is sort of there's sort of like an affirmation there. You're there. And I've always felt like I'm on the free will side, but always been like, I'm probably like, it's my emotions that are sort of pulling me in that direction of affirming free will. Like I'm not fully substantiating it with reason. I'm sort of, it feels right for me to approach life in the sense that I give myself permission to have the illusion of having free will. Which I
think there's something about SENI that makes it easier to believe in free will. I don't know what it is exactly, but I've noticed that there's something about SENI that like intuitively to them, like free will just makes more sense.
Yeah, there is something where you're just like, I'll do what I want kind of thing. Or you're like, you're I guess not wanting to get stuck in it's weird.
So this is off topic. I don't know if you want to talk about this or you still want to talk about consciousness or whatever. But I feel like you feel more like ESTP to me than ESFP.
It's funny. I got a comment today, and I was like, and it's somebody who knows you. They don't know you personally, but they were like,
oh, okay.
They had always make comments to me that I guess maybe just purely on a TI level that I reminded them of you, vice versa.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, we're different on perception axis, where that seems like to be the case, and I could kind of see that in the way we maybe orient ourselves. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people who have suggested ESTP to me.
Okay.
I don't think it's like outrageous. The thing that I do that might be kind of, I guess, TE is there's a lot of people, different typologists I've spoken to, and they all the extroverted thinking of it is like they all think I'm ESFP. And I guess if I'm playing along with that, you could argue I'm engaged in some sort of extroverted thinking thing.
Okay.
To an extent. Or you could argue it's FE and that I'm seeing this social expectation and I'm playing along with it.
Interesting.
I mean, either way, I think the extroverted irrationality is sound. If you wanted to, you could say as an extroverted irrational, that if you wanted to introduce an 8 function model, regardless, or even if you don't, you could say like they're not going to be an extroverted irrational, just like you, is not going to be 100% committed to the rational judgment end of things, or we're not going to drop anchor as much. So there's that aspect. And if you wanted to introduce an 8 function conception of things, you could be like, well, ignoring Socionics talking about TI blind spot for ESFPs, you could say, well, is it inconceivable that this extrovert sensation leading type who, I don't know, maybe could have some sort of relationship to TI, but not be an ESTP? I mean, we're in weird theoretical territory right now where I'm basically kicking over all the scaffolding and I'm left with nothing. No, I'm just kidding. But
yeah. No, it's just a vibe thing for me. Yeah. You just seem so analytical and like the kind of like.
Well, I'm flattered because I feel like through this interview, I've just been like making an ass of myself, and I'm like, this guy must think I am a freaking retard. But
no,
because I just.
But yeah, the way you like, I don't want to say troll it, but like the kind of poking, you like to poke at the system. You like to be like, hey, this is wrong. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, well, I don't know. It just feels very like TI or like ETP. But yeah, not something to stress about. I don't want to like impose.
No. And honestly, like when I first got into typology, I was not when I first got into typology, because I've been like I was watching Michael Pierce when I was like 17, 18 or whatever.
Nice.
But then when I first got into making YouTube videos, I was honestly arguing that I was a sensation leading type, but I was actually running with the argument that I was introverted sensing lead. I know that sounds crazy, but I was operating kind of from the framework. It's kind of more of a quasi socionics notion of like the introverted sensing was more attentive to, I guess, internal demands, and the extroverted sensation more to external demands. Yeah. And I kind of felt like I had a certain degree of or orientation towards stability and homeostasis that I read as being introverted sensing related. So I was actually arguing that I was like an ISTJ for like the longest time.
I remember that. I remember someone saying you're ISTJ, and then like recently I was like, I was like going through your profile a little bit. And I was like, this guy's ISTJ. Like what?
Yeah. I'm a little too unhinged for that to like really check out. Like in terms of the vibe. I don't know. I mean, it also depends on this is where we get into like, we're using the same words, but then people define it differently. Like, what do you think introverted feeling is? Like the socionics moves, they make introverted feeling just like TI is about the relationship between objects. They make FI like the relationship between people and like your closeness, your attraction, your repulsion, that type of thing. And I guess they're like someone like Jack Aaron would type me ESFP because like I screamed at him one time and apparently didn't like him or something.
Okay.
Which I mean, you could say like an ESTP can yell at people, and you could argue it's a bad feeling. I don't know, but I mean, I'm completely misrepresenting his stance, because he actually would have a very eloquent way of putting it.
He's very eloquent.
He would have an eloquent way of putting it that makes like a lot of sense, and it would be like pretty watertight, probably.
Okay, sure.
Sorry. I'm being too self-indulgent right now. We don't need
That's great.
We don't need to obsess over what my type is. But I think it's interesting that you're suggesting TI-FE axis, because I've had a number of people say that to me, and then I have the other group of people that are like, no, you're obviously FITE, and in socionics, like we can do the superego thing and be like, you have TI in your superego, and you're responding to that. But then it's like, where are you drawing the line? Are you then it's like, where are you drawing the line? Are you gonna call this, when are you deciding that it's superego TI versus ego TI, and what relationship distinction with introverted thinking are you drawing that allows you to tell them apart in any sort of reliable way? And then there's the Jack Aaron stance. Jack Aaron's a bit more, clear in that he's saying TI polar, so there's no consistency. So he'd say the endless Curtis is completely inconsistent, and that's why he's TI polar. But you could just say that that's EP stuff. You could just say EPs in general could be inconsistent because they're extroverted irrationals not wanting to drop their anchor. And because there's if you want to say that, because I'm ignoring SI, or I'm, non-SI user, if you're using a 4-function model, you could say, well, that's part of why Curtis is not building. There's the irrationality plus the lack of SI. So yeah, he can situationally do TI on individual objects, but then when he's tying everything together, he's a mess. So you could still be a TI user by that logic. It just wouldn't have like the Richard Dawkins TI SI combo. Yeah. There's that, but then they have a different fucking conception of SI. So then there's that issue as well, which is, it's a fucking quagmire. I'm becoming more Myers-Briggs pilled, funny enough, even though I started Myers-Briggs, then got into sociology, and now I'm almost circling back. I'm like, maybe there's the simplicity here. Like there's an answer to like this. Maybe there's something here. Now
the whole architecture of socionics is just like so overwhelming. It's just like, what super ego blocking? Like what? I don't know. Things need to be a little bit more poetical, which is why I always like the IDR Labs guys. Like they had a very poetical grasp of things.
Now people are going to say that you're a feeler because you are drawn into the poetics rather than the analytical distinction.
I'm a lover. Yeah. No, I don't know. I think
they're going to say we're both
part of growing up.
They're going to say we're both FI users. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. I'm ENFP actually.
Well, you had said that people thought you were an INTP for the long.
Oh yeah, I mean,
and then you were like, no, obviously I'm not. And
yeah, I get annoyed when people call me INTP. It's like no, like if you think that you don't understand. You don't understand the system. Like I'm so obviously not. It's like just because I'm like shy sometimes and like I don't really like, talking inanely. Like I'm not an INTP.
That's my job. I talk inanely, but
That's right.
Should we? Yeah. Do you want to? We can do future like.
This is great. Yeah, we can wrap it up.
You want to cut it here and maybe like we can go back to our fucking drawing boards and maybe we revisit again if we have. Like I don't want to overstay this and I don't want to like take all your time. I'm very excited to have you here and I'm.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for coming. I know this wasn't a very polished like interview style.
It was super fun. It was super fun. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope you had a good time.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I felt like you understood. Like, I felt like you were tracking with what I was talking about, and so that was like really satisfying for me. And like, because I feel like sometimes I'm like talking to a wall, and like, so yeah. Not with you, but just like when I'm making videos.
I mean, I could do a better job because I get excited and I interrupt you, but that's another story. I need to get better at that. But before I let you go, maybe I should, if I can, you approach it from this 4-function approach, I think.
Oh yeah. We can get into that. Yeah, sure. Yeah,
a little bit, just a little bit. And like, do you not think like, okay, if we define these 8 functions, do you not see like, let's say talk something like extroverted feeling where there is like a baseline of that in everyone? And you could say that like everyone has it to some degree, maybe some types, push it in the background more than others. But like as humans, we all have a little bit of something like extroverted feeling. I guess the problem there is it's like, where are you going to draw the line? But
my problem with My problem with the 8 function models is that they tend towards like concretizing the functions and tying the functions to specific contents. That seems to be like the temptation that happens with 8 function models, where it's like,
Right, because you have
well, I can
everything.
talk about, yeah, I can talk
You
about
have
my
every-
relationship with people. Is that necessarily FI? Like, I don't know. I could probably approach that in a TI way, like how I relate to people.
Right.
Yep.
But then you have the other problem where it's like you were talking about how I'm doing some TI. It's like I could also do it the other way where I'm like, well, if we do a Venn diagram between the two thinking functions, we could say that maybe what I'm doing is just thinking and it could still be TE. And there's like a Venn diagram overlap. And like you said, if we're saying content is not tied to a specific function, then there's that aspect to it as well, where it kind of, you still have kind of an inverted problem with the 4 function model, but still kind of the same problem, but in a different way, so to speak.
Yes. There is an advantage, I think, and I think the advantage to like mapping it like 8 function models is like, so that I can talk about how I relate to FI in other people. Like, you know, I mentioned like I always get like scared when there's FI around, like too much FI. So like that's useful. It's like, what is my relationship to FI as an ENTP when it's in other people? Like, I see that being kind of a useful aspect of the 8 function.
Like there's an Occam's razor there where it's like it's just the simplicity of it. Like it's
it's just like, okay,
like
I have like negative FI. That's how Michael Pierce presents it in Motes and Beams, is that the ENTP is the NE type with like negative FI.
That's the other way to do it, is you treat the backstack as a metaphor rather than a literal thing. Like, for example, ESFP, they'll say is FE demonstrative. You could say FE demonstrative is just a metaphor for being an EP who's a feeler, but not necessarily actually having FE. FE demonstrative is just a metaphor for being an EP who's a feeler.
Yeah. I mean, I don't need to get into like language too much, but like, you know, this is all models, you know, it depends on how useful it is. That's what matters, you know. And I like the 4 function model because I think it's more flexible. I don't like things getting too tied down to specific contents, etc. That's why I prefer it.
Useful is, you mean like explanatory power is basically what
exactly.
Okay. Because people are going to hear the word useful and they're like, oh my god, TEs or
oh yeah.
No, I mean that's the problem with language, right? Because people make associations with specific semantics. That's the problem with like semantic typing. People hear someone use a certain word and then they go, oh yeah, that's FITE. It's like, well, no, because you know you have to look at the process underneath it. Sorry, I'm talking your ear off. Anyways, it's been an absolute pleasure, John. Super cool having you. And the recording, I'm gonna look back the recording, make sure the audio is not cursed, not on your end, but more so my end, because I'm like shouting and I don't have a fucking microphone. So this might not be great, but so I apologize. I hope this recording is good. Anyways, thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks. You too, man. God bless.